Welcome to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting for April the 1st, 2025. My name is Christine Novello. I am the Association Treasurer, Governing Board Director, and the Chair of this meeting. So I call this meeting to order at 9 o'clock, and I invite you to please rise and join me in a Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you all. Again, I'm Christine Novello. I'm the chairperson of this meeting. I'm a governing board director and the association treasurer. I'm joined by all members of our Budget and Finance Committee meeting, so I'm pleased to establish that we certainly have quorum today. If you'd like to know a little bit more about the committee members and myself, you're welcome to go back to the September 3rd video where we introduced ourselves at length. So if you'd like to know who's who, that's the best way to do that. So we're moving on to agenda item 1.04, our meeting procedures. The governing board and its committees conduct all their meetings in compliance with Arizona Planned Community Association open meeting laws per ARS 33-1804, and in concert with RCSCW bylaws, policies, and standing rules. Parliamentary procedures, as outlined in the most recent edition of Robert's Rules of Order, will also be followed in all meetings as appropriate, consistent with Bylaw 3.07, Procedures for Owner-Member Meetings, and Standing Rules number 2 and number 3. So those bits of housekeeping out of the way, we move on to agenda item number 2.01, our meeting minutes from March 18th, 2025. Committee, did you see any concerns, have any corrections? I therefore believe we have consensus to approve those minutes. We'll move on to our new business. Agenda item 3. And 3.01, we move straight to our proposed fiscal year 2025 capital improvement project and R&R final review. Call to the podium Mr. Dave Johnson, who will be our new project manager upon the retirement of Carl Wilhelm. Before Dave gets started, I just want to make sure that we're all aware of what we're expecting to do today. Dave's going to walk us through the capital improvement plan and R&R budget, or specifically any changes. Of course, questions are welcome. We have 2 recommendations that we'll be formulating as a team in subsequent items. And we're all well aware of this. We've been talking about it all year. We've been emailing about it for the past several weeks. But that's the outcomes are those recommendations around the capital budget. So we'll get to those shortly. Dave, take it away.
Thank you, Director Novello. Good morning, committee and community. We'll start out with our color blocks, essentially the different categories of our proposed budget for fiscal year 25-26. I know you all are real familiar with that because we've been over it for the last few months. But there's been a couple changes, and that's what I'm going to highlight. Right there at the new capital projects list, you'll see the highlighted master plan at the top, $250K. That is a new addition. That's one major change. And then if we go on to the next repair and replacement budget, all the way at the bottom, there was a change where the servers were reduced from 2 to 1. We're going to keep the witness server, and all the way at the end of the slides, we've got the deferred list of projects, and that is a admin server that we've put off. I actually believe it's not just deferred, it's actually completely eliminated because the cloud takes care of that. Don't ask me to explain any more than that. At any rate, we can move on to the well, no changes in the golf section of the budget, and then our allowance numbers, which will be set aside as are needed for unexpected capital projects. If we can go to the next main slide, the presentation. How about that?
The PowerPoint. There we go.
Okay, so see if I can manage my way through this. I do want to say one thing. Carl's probably shaking in his boots. Don't, please. But the truth is, I am the new capital projects manager, and I've been spending the last several weeks really getting familiar with all this. Carl has set it up very well. So he's teed it up for me to have a good year taking care of you all and getting these projects done. I will be the new capital projects manager, but to me, Carl will always be the capital projects manager. So I hope to do as good a job or get close. Okay. So as you see, those were our color blocks we just went through, the different categories in our budget. And that is now the updated numbers as of this meeting. We've updated the capital number, new capital projects, and let's see, and as well the items that are deferred. Next, what we're going to do is just highlight the added item, which is the master plan for $250,000. We're going to be proposing extensive research and data collection. That'll include a lot of community surveys, member engagement workshops, stakeholder meetings, programs and services. What those needs are, we'll be assessing those. We'll be evaluating existing activities, facilities, and amenities, including recommendations of new opportunities. And finally, this one's the most interesting to me, just to see how we're going to transition, exploring next generation trends in the retirement, social, and leisure activities. What do the next couple generations do with their time when they're retired? So that'll be exciting. And it takes lots and lots of research, and that's what the master plan is for. So at that, I would like to ask if the committee has any questions.
And thank you, Dave. The clarification that I'd like you to, or Cliff, if one of you can update the committee. You've answered this a couple of times, but since we have more committee members here, please just talk a little bit about why this is a capital item and why it's so important to, it's considered an asset. Maybe you can just talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I can do that. Thank you, Director Novello. First and foremost, this is an asset to the community. This is a plan that will be drawn up and put together and will encompass all the things that are on this slide. But I think, you know, one of the deliverables in our strategic plan is that we develop a master plan. The deliverable date on that is fiscal year 25-26. It's a continuation of our planning, our overall planning. It's a deliverable on our strategic plan for next year. And so that's why we added it to this budget. And again, this is an asset to the community, and this is going to require, it was approximately $24,000 for the strategic plan. And that was surveys and data mining and collection from just our management team and our governing board. So we have to reach out to the community. We have to reach outside of the community to pull all this data together and formulate an overall master plan, and then present it and work it through the community, through the committees, to the governing board to give us, you know, long-term direction on and how to and then tie in the strategic plan to that. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
And again, we've had some updates, and this is relatively late breaking in terms of its addition, but certainly one that we have anticipated since we started talking as a community about our strategic plan, and we're all very excited, I believe, at the governing board and so forth to see forward progress. But let's talk about the project. I'll look to the committee because I've had my opportunity to ask questions. So look to the committee to ask questions about this or really any of the items in our capital improvement. So we'll go in order. I expect that Ed will have questions, but let's take it from there, Chris. Thanks.
Yeah, as far as the master plan, have we identified resources that are going to be put forth to do all this work? And is it expected that this is all going to get done within 25-26 fiscal year?
I can answer that. We don't have the exact timeline of when it'll be done. So, but the objective is to pick the right time to engage with the community and with all the data that has to be done. I don't know that we anticipate having it completed by the end of FY26, but our general manager's coming up. Maybe he can give some more information.
Yeah, so the goal is during FY25-26 is to actually get the consultant on board. So we'll put out a RFP with all the parameters and all the expectations that we need in order to accomplish the master plan, and then get that process going. Once we actually get the consultant on board, it's going to take probably anywhere from, I would say, 9 to 12 months for it to get completed. So the master plan itself will not get completed. I don't anticipate it getting completed in this coming fiscal year. The procurement and getting it started will be during this fiscal year.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Rick, questions?
Yeah, I have a few questions. Is this being handled the same way as the strategic plan? I mean, is it coming out of the reserve fund? And is this going to be on the, what do you call it, reserve funding list?
Yeah, as anything that's capital will be.
Anything, yeah?
Yeah, so it's a capital project, so anything capital improvement project is funded through the reserve fund. It will not be added to the reserve study because it's
Right.
not something, it's not an asset that, the useful life on that won't be, it's a living, breathing document. It'll continue to exist.
I mean, I find this is, I understand it's an asset, but a lot of this stuff looks like an operating expense, not the capital asset.
Oh, yeah, so that's a good question. So I think Christine kind of alluded to that, and I didn't explain that. I did refer to our CPA, Clifton Larson Allen CLA, and consulted with them, and they are in agreement that this is an asset and can be capitalized.
In my experience as well, that can absolutely be done under the right criteria. I'm not a CPA, but thank you, Cliff, for referring it to our auditors.
Well, if you pass it through the CPA, that's fine, but I still think this is an operating expense that, you know, it's going to take some time to gather all the data, and it's $250,000 enough. So.
Well, we don't know that yet. I think the general manager has already said the question is being able to fund getting started, going through our procurement process. And since our auditors that we hire and approve every year have decided that this is something that we can capitalize, we're going to go with that.
Okay, and I just want to make, are we consistently classifying this along with the strategic plan, along with the IT, the other capital requests we had earlier for the IT adjustment or project to build the website and all of that? Is it being handled consistently?
Yeah, so the strategic plan operating expense helps give us direction on the short term, is more tactical. It's not exactly tactical in terms of how we're going to do something. It just says that we're going to deliver these things in the short term. And then that also, because you've got your values and all the things that go along with that, your mission, your vision, all that hooks in or ties into the overall master plan.
Okay, I'll let others have questions.
Stephen, it may help the committee if you could just remind all of us in the community as well how we characterize the master plan versus the strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bell. I was just going to chime in with that. So yeah, the strategic plan, you got to remember that's basically something that's going to be a living document. It's the priorities for the next 1 to 3 years from an operational standpoint as to what does the board want me as a general manager to accomplish over the next 1 to 3 years. And those projects and that that strategic plan will be updated on an annual basis with each governing board moving forward every year. It'll be driven by their priorities, the governing board's priorities, as well as eventually the master plan. So the master plan, once we get that into place, will be those things that we're looking at. Okay, here's the things we want to accomplish within the community. We want to, build more something. We want to expand this. We want to add to that. We want to provide funding or support to various clubs. Again, I'm just speaking out of whatever that might come out of that. Those then feed into the strategic plan. So those then, we have now this master plan with all these things that the community says they want. The governing board then gets to decide based on that, what do we want, General Manager, for you to accomplish over the next 1 to 3 years out of that plan. So I think the point that Cliff's trying to make is the strategic plan is more of an operational document. And is really more of so that we're all on the same page. We all have this guiding light about what we're working on, what we're moving towards. Whereas the master plan, it feeds capital improvement projects in the future primarily.
Right. And again, I don't have a career in public service, if you will, right, in city governments and so forth, but I know that you have quite a bit, and this aligns with your experience and, and my corporate experience as well in terms of how to differentiate. So just wanted to.
35 years of doing this. This is, and I get that we're not a municipality, and I'm not trying to make this into one, but I can tell you that the concept is the same as far as how we operate it in this sense of how to decide what does the community want, how do we figure out based on that feedback that how to plan that out and do it appropriately so that we're all on the same page. Otherwise, what we're all doing, when I say we, I mean the board, is chasing mylar balloons. And oh no, we need to do this. Well, no, let's do that. Oh, we should do this. This gives that strategic direction that we can all focus on. We all have a guiding light in that general plan of where we're heading with the community as a whole.
After a year and a half of service on the board and a year prior to that on budget and finance, I can assure you that not only the community, but the governing board and its standing committees have all been rallying for this. So certainly a welcome endeavor. It's just a matter of how it's funded now and moving forward. So thanks again. David.
I'm sorry, just to add a little bit more. What it does also is it really does, so because you're always going to have difference of opinions about what should be happening within the community. And so it gives that overall guidance to the board as to this is what the community wants. So when someone says, well, why are you doing that? Well, because the majority of the community said this is what we would like to see happen.
Exactly. Thank you. It really does help settle a lot of the questions around budgeting as well. Why are we doing this XYZ project, the new projects, and sets us up to consider those. So without ado, David, any questions or comments?
No, I was going to echo what you just said a second ago, because I think if you've been to any meetings or watched the things on YouTube, the meetings on YouTube, it's been clear that the members of the community have wanted a master plan. So I think we're meeting the request of our community members. The only question I have is when we generally come forward to capital budget issues, you've got a pretty good thumb upon Cliff and the entire team. They have a pretty good thumb upon the cost of something. So my question is, how did you arrive at this number, and are you going to put an RFP out for that type of project?
So the number was arrived at from, again, experience and a guesstimate. Having done one, just recently completed one in Wickenburg, it was $137,000, and that's a community of 8,500 people, and that was 2 years ago. So is it going to be enough? I'm hoping. That's the plan. And will there be an RFP? Absolutely. Because there's several firms that do this type of work, and obviously, based on what we're looking for, we want to make sure we get all the data elements and make sure that we have extensive community engagement. That's the number one thing, and that's what they do. But if you think about what that means, you're talking about many, community surveys, many community meetings, focus groups, stakeholder meetings. Stakeholders can be the clubs, representatives of the clubs, different activities and such. So there'll be a lot of input, and that's where, again, I understand it's a lot of money. If you think, though, about how much it takes to gather that information, it's extensive. And I want to clarify, too, because I know I've heard a couple of comments, not here, but other places about, hey, we have a process for this already, and we do through the various committees, properties, and such. This does not take the place of those. So the strategic plan and the master plan The things that are in the strategic plan and the things that eventually be in the master plan that'll feed the strategic plan, those will still funnel through our existing processes. They will still funnel through the properties committees and through B&F and to the board. It isn't as if this is going to be, even right now with the strategic plan, it's not as if these things are going to be done and just be done without approval. These are all directing me as a general manager to have staff work towards these things and eventually then work it through our committees and work it to the board. So I just want to clarify that as well. It does not replace our existing, it just enhances our existing processes.
And to also add a little bit of color, perhaps, the reminder that I had to look up the number, that's why I was over here, but it's FY10 that is our procurement policy. This will, of course, like all of our procurement, follow that policy, which means there's an RFP, there are multiple bids and so on and so forth. So we don't know if this is going to be the final cost, is my understanding, but rather this will go out to bid. We'll be able to oversee that, we, the community, the governing board, and budget and finance going forward, assuming we go forward with this, that is. Anything else, David? Chris, you've been waiting patiently, sorry.
Well, you know, I had a couple questions, but your explanation answered every one of them, so thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Sorry we stole your thunder there. John?
Yeah, I echo that. I had the same questions. Just maybe a little more detail on David's question. What I hear you saying is it's kind of a placeholder from experience. That's the same kind of explanation we have on the next item, which I would support. But from your experience, I heard the word consultant. I'm sure it's staff labor. Is there a budget? Can you take that 250 and say, give us categories of this is how you're going to spend that money? If the consultant's going to be, half of it, I see that number and I'm thinking, well, that's a big number, and I trust that we'll get there. But to be able to sit on the committee and devise, it feels weird to not have a little more detail of how that money will be spent.
And before you answer, I'm so sorry, Stephen, just a reminder for John and for all, we're not making decisions. Luckily for the committee, that distinction falls to the governing board, just so that you understand. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't, it's a very valid question, but if that takes a little bit of the pressure off, we're making a recommendation, not making the final. So with that being said, thank you.
Yeah, so the amount, whatever it ends up being through the procurement process, will be for the consultant to do all the work. It's not going to break down saying you're going to spend $50,000 on a survey or $10,000. It's not. It's basically we're going to hire a consultant to produce what we expect for them to produce with criteria, meaning that you will have X number of community meetings, X number of surveys, you gather this kind of data. There will be the parameters in the RFP that what is expected, and then they will have to deliver those expectations.
So the majority of this money goes to a consultant.
The entire amount with the consultant.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Tip of the hat to all of you. You answered all my questions. Thank you.
You'll go first next time, so just be, Mickey.
Just more of a comment, really. I think that the distinction when we look at master plan, you look at master plan and strategic plan, I think that sometimes people think, well, what's the difference, right? What is the difference? I think that what we're looking at here is the master plan is a vision, right? It's a vision for our future. And I think that that is the piece that people feel has been missing. Strategic plan is the execution of that vision. And so when you think of those two things, master plan is big picture. It's related to the assets of the community, both repurposing, what do we do next, all of that. So I really do see that as capital, as opposed to strategy is execution, and that is operational.
Well said.
Thanks for that. Any other, not just on this particular item, but any other questions on the changes that Dave has presented before we move on? We may have other questions as we move on, but nonetheless. Okay then, so we'll consider Agenda 3.01 complete. Don't go too far though, Dave. Thanks for that. We're going to move on to our this process that we affectionately, or maybe misname as pull-outs, right? So 3.02, we're going to do 2 rounds of discussion and on the capital improvement project itself. When we talk about pull-outs, a lot of folks get a little confused about what that means. We're not proposing removing anything from the budget, but rather identifying which items deserve an independent vote and discussion from the governing board. That's what we mean by pull-out. So the governing board, when we review and approve the capital and operating budget, we do it as a whole. This is the overall budget. We're not approving specifics, but especially on the capital, we're not necessarily approving every single line item individually. This is our collective recommendation to the governing board, which of the items in the proposed list should be voted on independently and discussed independently. So everything else will be voted on as a whole by the governing board. Now, at the governing board workshop and upcoming meetings, what we will see happen is the governing board will consider not just budget and finance, but every standing committee's input to the same question, and then discuss independently those items that have been recommended for independent pull-out. So that's the reason for the phrase. I know I've explained it a number of times, but sometimes people come to these meetings, residents are watching or are here for the first time. So I just wanted to clarify. So in 3.02, we're looking specifically for any of the capital improvement items that are between $50,000 and under $100,000. We say $50,000 because really anything under $50,000 is by our policies in the hands of the general manager. You could express an interest or a concern in something less than that, but the official, if you will, task for us is to identify. Now, when we did some pre-work, for those of you who are here, the committee's been doing some pre-work ahead of time. Actually, we've spent the entire year looking at this process. So this is the culmination of several months of work. But specifically, we did some pre-work ahead of time to help each other understand where some of the potential concerns were. So to inform the rest of the committee, there isn't, none of us identified a line item that fell under $100,000 of capital, but this is our opportunity to take a look at the list one more time. Is there anything $100,000 or less in the capital improvement list that seemed to be of concern? Okay, so real quick, we're going to do a quick voice around on the recommendation that the governing board move forward with the capital improvement items between $50,000 and $99,999. So we'll start with you, Mickey. An agree means you agree with the recommendation. An object, those are the 2 words. Object would mean you object with that recommendation. So
Agree.
thanks.
Agreed.
John?
Agreed.
Agree.
David?
Agree.
Agreed.
Agree.
Excellent. So we have, well, can consensus be unanimous? But we're all in agreement. We're moving forward on the 50K to 100. Moving on to agenda item 3.03 with the capital pullouts of $100,000 and over. Preliminary input was that we shared some observations. One, before we saw the change today, of course, we may have some additional, but we did say, I did see some, it seemed to be consensus with the technology capital improvement items. So we can, if we need to, we can pull that up in the presentation, but anybody have any thing that they want to say about the IT proposal? This is for, moving forward with the $300,000 proposal to get started with our website and technology redesign. Mickey? We'll start with Mickey's side this time.
Okay, so I am definitely in favor, right? It isn't pulling it out to say that I'm, have any issues. But I think that it is a big enough start to a project, and that's all it is a start. I think that because it could potentially be so significant that a kind of a bigger discussion about it and the fact that it is most likely the beginning of a bigger project, that it really warrants an individual discussion and approval.
Jim, anything you wanted to, or anybody else, anybody want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that's the one I think that needs better clarity. We need to have a more defined discussion of deliverables and, yeah, thank you.
No problem. Anyone have any, John, or we can go around, any questions or concerns about that one?
I concur.
Chris?
Yes, like everyone else said, we're just looking for two, three, 4 bullet points that say, if we spend this money and we get this result, it's a success. And if we don't, then we have to, reevaluate. And again, I think for me, I don't want anyone to misunderstand that this is not, we're in favor of this. We just feel like we're spending $300,000 and we'd like to know what we're getting for that $300,000, a little more detail.
That's, again, that could be, that's the reason why we have this process. David?
Yeah, I support what has been said by my colleagues on this committee. My question is, I would like to know how this fits in with there are 3 categories which I looked at in the strategic plan. There is the integrated IT system, to improve the technology for members, and then explore a CRM CRM tool potentially. They each have timeframes for them. And I'm just trying to understand where this fits into that, because we seem to be ahead of ourselves on this type of project when we have these 3 identifiable areas in which we want to work on the strategic plan, which I think sound very reasonable, and how this fits into that. So that's really where part of my
That's a
discussion
great question.
is.
Can you answer that for us, Dave, or call someone up who can?
Kyle?
I'll just, while he's coming up, say that in the operating budget, we have funds to address in the IT budget and the operating budget to address some of those things in the strategic plan. This is development of the website and all that. So this is separate from some of those other strategic items. They all hook together, of course, but there are operating funds in the budget to do that as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great question because all of our expenditures align to those items, so.
Yeah, kind of, it fits in with all of them, to be honest. It's kind of figuring out the starting point, and this kind of seems to be the starting point for the integration of all the systems. We want the web, especially the member side of the web page, to really integrate what we have. Obviously, we're not going to integrate with something that we know we're going to get rid of in the next 2 years or something. So any existing product that we know we have for the long term will be part of the integration. So it's kind of all part and parcel of that.
Do you expect, Kyle, to build off, do you therefore expect that this funding could include or touch the CRM portion, or is that a little bit more further out?
Potentially, but I think it's probably a little bit more further out. I mean, it was something that TEI would use for our main point of sale system, something we could potentially have then developed into that.
Okay.
Or tighter integration.
But there's definitely a tie, so thanks for the question. David, any follow-up on that, or does that answer?
No, I guess the question is, I understand your point upon this all fits into potential, all those. But I just am trying to understand why we wouldn't wait until you've done some analysis of these. An enterprise type software is going to be the foundation for which everything is going to be built from. So we're taking one segment of that going to be attached to this enterprise software, and now we're going to do that before we have an enterprise software actually identified. That's my concern, and how we put that strategically. What is the proper timing for it? Again, I'm not against the idea of enhancing the website, but it is functioning and not where I want it to be, and I think where the members want it to be.
Yeah.
But what is the proper timing, especially when now we have these identifiable things we're going to be doing on a strategic plan? That's where my question really comes about.
And up until today, the updates that I had received on this project and the goal was really more looking at the member experience initially, using the existing enterprise software, but providing an enhanced member experience through this proposed change to create a phone app, to create a front end that's more integrated from a member perspective. So I had not previously heard that there might be some underlying changes, but that was just my understanding, so thanks for clarifying that,
Yeah,
Kyle.
and then also for like the public facing websites in City West, a lot of that would be upgraded too, and that wouldn't really be integrated with all the systems. That's kind of more static or more glitz and glamour there. Like I said, talked about real estate integration, that type of thing. So that'd be part of that too, which wouldn't really tie into some of our systems.
Yeah. And again, just to remind us all, I'm sort of deliberately repeating myself, that we're making a recommendation and not making the decision. The governing board has that task, but nonetheless. What else, David? Anything else?
No, I think that expressed what my concerns are about
Thanks.
this proposal as it stands right now.
Yeah. And Rick, at our last meeting, you had expressed some concerns, but I'm going to, if you want to express them again for the rest of the committee.
I agree with David. My big thing is that you're looking at the customer experience. How about the operational experience and getting more efficiency within the operations? Because if we look at what we're doing operationally from a strategic standpoint and from all this IT standpoint, but yet we're not increasing headcount, is that included? And what operational efficiencies are coming out of this in order for us to continue to have the current staffing levels? So that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, a lot of the operational things would be, a lot of that's coming out of the operational. But there's some stuff we're looking at for the finance team with accounts payable, automating that, and also like the credit card processing, expense reports. Cliff could.
Yeah, I would say that, the collections side of operations would be impacted by this. Being able to process more payments online, make it more efficient, being able to hook in to someone's bank account versus paying with a credit card. So the potential for savings there. Ticketing, being able to sell more tickets online versus having lines and lines of people here buying tickets in the morning. So yeah, there's some operational efficiencies there, but the website really is our marketing tool. To Mr. Scott's point, it's a portal for our members to go in and transact and do all of that. All of these things need to be done regardless of what operating system we have. They really do. And there's no out-of-the-box solution for us that comes with that. So, these will all create efficiencies and better marketing and better experience for our customers right away when they happen. And then we'll continue to assess our other systems. But I know Mr. Ernos himself.
Yeah. So if I may, so one of the things to keep in mind in this strategic plan that was just approved with the target completion date of FY27, okay, is evaluate an integrated IT system for staff, members, and facilities. Evaluate a comprehensive IT system to streamline operations and improve communication among staff members, and facilities. So this is basically a subset of that, okay? Because otherwise, if we don't start now, I mean, we can, I've said it before, we can not do this, we can do it the other way around and figure all this out and then come back and say we need X amount of dollars. The website we know already is something that is needed to be updated in order to really improve that communication because again, part of the direction from the governing board was focus on the member first, right? So that's what this is looking at. Now, all those other systems are not going to be ignored during this process by any means. And we recognize that as we look at upgrading the website, we're going to make sure that it integrates properly whatever we do, that we're thinking, we have the foresight of thinking about what that looks like, which is this strategic item on here. And the completion date of 2027 is intentional in the sense that we have a lot to do, and even that's an ambitious date, frankly, and will likely change, but that's the target date at this point. So I'm not sure if that clarifies some of the comments.
I think that's an important distinction. Thank you for stepping up to say that because that, being a part of that strategic plan process, and a couple folks here observed some bits and pieces. Some of the questions at the time, just so that you guys know, that ambitious date of fiscal year 2027 to complete that presumes we would start with this kind of investment. If for some reason we don't, those dates would be revisited, I'm certain. So, Chris, you had a follow-up before we?
Yeah, actually, there's this past 5 minutes of conversation, I think, is what scares me the most about this purchase, is we went off on so many different things, right? That it sounds like an overpromise or maybe over expectation. If you polled everyone in the room, what do you expect this $300,000 to get you? And I think that's my biggest concern. I would tone it down. I understand this is a first step. This is a reactionary, trying to be quick, make an improvement. And if it's just a matter of, give me an app that'll work on Android, give me an app that'll work on an iPhone, that I'll be able to do this, and this. I understand in between there, you try to make the experience a little nicer and improvement, but I'm afraid I'm a little bit confused in what we expect to get with 300,000, and because we stepped into the next level, right? This is the beginning, and then next time we're going to do more. Where do we stop with this?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And to amplify, we've requested a few times, perhaps I'm clear on the fact that this is not a completion. This is a start. If I'm hearing you correctly, Chris, I would also recommend that as we communicate about this as a group and as the operations team, please be upfront with the fact that this is an expected first step. Correct. So thanks for that.
With limited results, right? We're not going to solve the world's problems with this. We're gonna take these baby steps, and this is good.
It's the first step of a strategic initiative. President Leary, you have a comment first?
Yes, I do. Before I came to Sun City West, this is what I did. I consulted with organizations on their IT, operations and their infrastructure, the whole thing. And that's what we're proposing here. One of a colleague of Christine's and mine often says that the systems that we currently have are from the Soviet era. Now that's a little bit of hyperbole, but it is descriptive of where we are, that like a lot of corporations did in the 80s, 70s and the 80s, and even into the 90s, they bought a lot of point solutions. I have an app that does X. I have an app that does Y. I have one, Z. And I have a whole alphabet of those. But they don't talk to each other, or they do it with great difficulty. So what this 300K is proposed to do is to not go out and start buying more stuff necessarily. Yeah, there are going to be some things that we're going to look at, like the website and a phone app. But in order to do those things, we also have to look at how do we get data from app X onto the website? How do we get it from app Y onto the phone? So all of that has to be looked at, and we may or may not buy solutions or wholesale change any system that we have. But before we do any of that, we have to take a wholesale look at what we're doing. So to Chris's point, rather than discussing what apps or what tangible thing am I going to get out of this, I may get out of this as nothing more than a plan, which is what we absolutely need. And I think that's what your concerns are, is that let's just not go out and start doing the same thing we've done in the past. Let's be smart about it and integrate it so that we can move data from different places. We can achieve the efficiencies of the technology, achieve the efficiencies of letting people do, rather than doing something manual, they can do something else that's important for us. So that's what the 300K is, definitely a start. We hired Kyle because we recognize that we need help. We need to give him the weapons that he needs to help be successful.
Thank you. And hopefully that helps. Remember too, when I was cautioning or guiding us, that the governing board has the distinction of making some of the tough decisions. Part of this might also be answering some of the concerns that we've asked about what are we going to get? How do we fund everything all at once? This is a very nuanced type of, piece of work, but it is capitalized for sure. So again, similar to what we were talking about with the master plan, this is a long-term, we're building long-term assets here, even though it's not a piece of equipment. David?
I appreciate your comment, and I've worked in IT and implementation of large systems too, so I have some background on this. And so my concern is not the fact that we're going to spend money for a new website. I think that that is needed in the community. I think it's a marketing thing. What I don't want to have happen is what you described, because in the 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s, where you have these freestanding subset of things that you build an interface that costs money, and then you go back and put a new system in and you're redoing that again. So what I don't want to have is the $300,000 to do that when we haven't determined what our IT enterprise system is. So if we develop, it was $300,000 to develop a pure website, that's fine. We may not get to that point of having the app. We may not have that point where we can pay your dues because we don't have that integrated IT system in place yet. But what I don't want to have money spent is put this money into that effort now and then go back and spend it again. That's my real concern.
And David, hearing you loud and clear, one of the things that is my role, if you will, is to represent the viewpoints of the committee as a whole. And I'd have no problem representing that. We also, we have President Leary here to also hear, and all of the we have several directors here present, and those that aren't here are listening online or will be listening. So just so know that all of our words will be listened to.
Yeah, David, I totally agree with you. We, part of what I anticipate that this starting funding will do is help us plan those things and prioritize them in an order so that we implement them in such a way as to make the best and effective use of that money. I totally agree with you.
Thank you. And myself as well. So I have no problem representing that. Rick?
Just go back to David.
I'm sorry, Kyle.
Yeah, no problem. We are looking into, our main point of sale system is TEI. So we're looking into see if that is our final solution. And if it is, we are looking into move into their cloud version too. So that's something we're taking into consideration. If that's gonna be our back end where payments are flowing into for point of sale, we want to make sure that that's definitely what we're using before we set up integration with that. So,
And TEI was initially designed as a golf system, yeah?
Yeah.
And we use it we have modified it extensively to be our primary, not our sole, but one of our primary.
Yeah, and they've worked with us a lot with custom modifications, and they kind of designed the program to kind of fit our type of problem. So works really well. So we're looking to see if the cloud is the best way to go, or if there's a competitor that makes more sense. But we'll definitely, before we integrate with them, we want to make sure that they are our solution or their vendor.
Thank you. So with that, any other follow-ups? David, Rick, Ed?
I'm much more comfortable from my background talking about spending $3 million to change our irrigation system. So these type of projects are kind of hard to get your arms around.
They are.
One thing though, I thought from what I'm hearing and what I've seen done in the past is these YouTube videos, especially, here's what's going on. You have the guy at the golf course talking about what we did this week. And so you've got kind of a storytell throughout, I think, which will help our members understand this more. If you have that type of thing, I think we can take that from a replacement asset to this type of thing, because as what we're hearing, it's hard to get your hands around this stuff. And the members, they're gonna say the same thing that we're saying, and I think you can really help get with this project if you can do similar things, I think.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on? I have the power again. Thank you. So any other comments or questions on on any of our capital improvement items. You know, we've really gone around the horn on, actually, let's just focus it on this one particular one right now, the website redesign. Well, anything else on that one, Jim?
I guess my one question is, and I guess I should elaborate a little bit more, and maybe you have, and please don't take offense to this. This has been out of the bag now for a couple months, and I would have thought that we'd have some kind of we've got a strategic plan, we're working on a master plan. I would have thought from the IT, from your new position, that we would have some kind of a presentation of a member experience, facilities, ops, and from an IT perspective, and how this is all going to roll out, where we're short and how we're going to, go to the new promised land. And that's where I agree with Chris. Everything's all over the place, and 300 grand, and everybody's got different ideas of what to expect. It'd been nice to have it kind of parceled out into a plan, and rather than just, hey, give me 300 grand, let's go.
So
I think Stephen can answer.
Yeah, well, I just want to remind the committee that Kyle has been on board a solid 90 days. So he is in that process of doing that. He has not completed that process. I mean, you're talking about an employee who's been on for literally for 90 days at this point. So he is still in that evaluation process, still putting together a game plan. He has made major leaps and strides in evaluating already. But again, he's going to need some time to do that, which we know that this is a desire by the governing board to improve that member experience. So this is why we're asking for this amount. And he has enough experience to know as far as what that might look like from a financial standpoint. But to your point, Jim, I mean, yes, eventually there will be an overall roadmap for IT to figure that out. He's not at that point yet.
And can you, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I know that this is something the governing board has asked even before we brought Kyle on board. Stephen, do you have a general timeframe of, between you and Kyle when you'd expect to see that kind of IT roadmap?
We've not laid out a time period yet.
Okay.
I mean, again, at 90 days in, it's been him just getting his arms around
Understood.
the department, getting his arms around our systems.
But we will see a roadmap.
Yes, that is the goal, is to create a roadmap on what that's going to look like. But again, we're just not at that point yet.
And as a reminder too, I know, Jim, I'm sorry,
No
but
worries.
a reminder to all of us as well. This is, we have our CSCW, Sun City West, we have an annual budgeting process that is really tight. So this is our one and only time to approve this kind of expenditure, as even though, given our druthers, we would like to see a lot more information. That's the reason why this is a bit on the vague side by comparison to what we see for our irrigation projects and so forth. And that's not at all, it's what I would expect to see in terms of the level of detail. So that's not at all a ding. I'm just saying it's uncomfortable for us at
I want
best.
to make it clear too, I fully understand the concern. I get it, because again, it's not this, laid out, mapped out, 100%, this is what it's going to look like. And I've said several times, and we can do the other way around. We could decide not to do the financing, put the money up. That means, again, we're looking quite a ways out before we're looking at doing that. Kyle has done a phenomenal job in just the short time he's been here, and really has taken to an understanding of how our systems work. But again, he needs that time to figure these things out. Now, again, we could wait until we've got a full roadmap, if that was the direction of the governing board eventually, or this committee. I just believe that what I'm hearing primarily from the governing board and the community is we want things to start moving right away. I am very mindful also that we are not going to jump into something, to your point, David, jump into something and just say, well, okay, let's just do it just to show that we did something. That is not how I operate at all. If anybody hasn't gotten to know me yet, and I'm sure Jack would support this, I'm very, very intentional on how I do things, and very mindful of being a good steward of the members' funds, and would not move something forward just for the sake of moving it forward.
Jim, I'm sorry, we cut you off, so.
Can you can you give me a little more when you say member experience? What is that? What's member experience? I mean,
Well, I think we've talked about this a little bit in the past. So we're looking to make sure that the website is easy to navigate so they can find the information they're looking for, that they can conduct more of the business online that maybe they can't do now. It's really making sure that the members are getting they're not frustrated when they come to our website on trying to do something or find information. I personally think it's difficult to find things. And it's our
agreed.
website. So I always look at it, I try to view the website or anything I do from the perspective of the members. If I were a member, what would this look like to me? I was looking for something the other day. I was looking for our press releases and tried to scroll through them. It took me a while to figure out, oh, this is where they're at. And over here, I got to click it. It's just not easy to navigate. So we talk about member experience. It's a very broad term.
It is.
It really is just making things more enjoyable for the members so they're not frustrated when they're trying to find information. When it comes to the website, is what I'm referring to. Overall member experience is just making sure that they came here to have fun and to have a good experience, and that overall is the overreaching view for me is they should not have to work to have fun.
Agreed, and that's what I was going to poke on because that ultimately that's high on the pecking order.
Yep.
So I guess my question is there integration of a calendar where people could see what's going on at 2:00 this afternoon, club wise,
Yep.
and rec center wise.
Yeah, and that's a piece of it as well. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been, we can all tell stories, and I saw, we all sort of lit up when you said that, but Stephen has been very clear on this from the start of his tenure, which is not all that long either, but we, as owner members here, we shouldn't have to work as hard to have our fun, and I think we all resonate with that. It also means from a governing board and a standing committee perspective that there's some money that has to go into that, which is how it goes, right? So but for me, I remember moving here 8.5 years ago. I could not, and still cannot, I understand why, but I could not figure out. All I wanted to do was at the time, I wanted to take a Zumba class. I challenge anybody here to try to figure out how to do that. And there is an abundance. There are so many clubs that offer that one. I'm just giving one example, right? There's so many clubs that offer that kind of fitness class, many clubs, but you have to join every single club in order to figure that out. So and none of them are on our shared calendar, right? So and these are things that sound really small, and they are, but solving it's going to take some time. So thank you for that.
And I just want to expand, that's a great point. I love that example, actually. And to understand that this is not done in a vacuum either. It's not just Kyle and I sitting around saying, oh, this is what we're going to do. I mean, this is going to be certainly within our own team, which they know from their experience when they have to deal with members and their concerns and their issues. We're going to be looking at it internally. We're going to create a group, an IT group, that's going to brainstorm what are the things that we need to do, and what do we want it to look like, how do we want it to feel. So there's going to be a process with that, and certainly we're going to also then get input from folks on the outside as well. Internally, we'll start with that, of course, and then move from there. But it's going to be a little bit of a process. But and listen, I don't even know 100% that we're going to necessarily need this money this year. It may end up being not this year. I just don't want it. I would like it for it to be available, so if we reach that point, that we are able to do it. Otherwise, we're a ways out, and so it really is that chicken and the egg kind of thing. I mean, do we put the money in the budget now, or do we put the money in the budget later?
Right.
The planning versus the others. So.
And again, the decision for the committee here, the decision is for the governing board to make. So we're making a recommendation. Do we want to see the governing board have this kind of discussion before moving forward, or does it get approved as a part of the whole? That's the question we have for ourselves. John?
You said something a while back that was very pertinent, and that is the budget process is a moment of time. Meaning we're trying to budget something today for something we quite don't know. And I think you mentioned that last meeting of, we just have to get it in the budget, seeing our capital budget for future years. I'm wondering if there's on this line item, if the governing board could have a two-tiered approval system, meaning approve the placeholder today. He's shaking his head, so that means no.
It's not in our current purview, but it's something that
I'm just wondering, before they execute the plan, that they would present the plan to the governing board, and the governing board
If it's important enough to this committee to make that a separate recommendation, we could, but remember, that's in the hands of the governing board. And generally, what we do is we authorize the general manager to move forward and execute on these items. That is our governing board's purview.
So then what the governing board is asking for is a placeholder.
If the governing board approves this, it would be not a placeholder, but it's an approved capital item that's subject to the same procurement policies and every other policy that we do for every capital initiative we have. Chuck?
That is correct. The governing board is not asking for this, it is the general manager asking for this. And if it is approved, it's part of the budget. But before the money is spent, there will be a process that says, this is what we're gonna spend it on, it's gonna cost X, Y, or Z. And as Stephen said, the money may not be spent. So yes, it's a placeholder, it's our best guess at this point in time, in order not to lose 18 months. If we need it, we've got it. If we don't need it, we won't spend it. So
It's the general manager's best
yeah,
guess,
exactly.
not
It's
yours.
It's his best estimate at this point, and the governing board will approve it or not. So it's really kind of a binary decision.
Yeah, and thank you for that. If you look at the current process for procurement, right, any of our capital items does have to go through an entire, and the staff will have to comply with that process. So there's oversight, there's compliance with that. Although I'm stretching the point to make the point, there isn't any way that we would go forward and spend, $5 million on an irrigation project, just write the check and walk away. There's a lot of procurement that goes into that. This is not $5 million, but it's still pretty hefty. And all of those policies, whether it's $50,000 of capital or $5 million of capital, follow and adhere to the same policies that we have. So have a bit of reassurance on that, and there is oversight and so forth. So again, I know that it might be a little, we're not going to be able to solve it, nor do we have to. The question before us is whether we want, I believe I know the answer, but the committee needs to make a recommendation. Do we want the governing board to have this, pull this out independently and discuss this item separately from the rest of the capital? Stephen, do you have a point?
I'm sorry, Director Novell, I just wanted to throw in one last comment too, is just understand that if folks haven't realized already too, that my style is very much on the side of transparency. So this is not like we're going to take this item, go find a vendor and just do it. And next day, the website looks different. We will be very much transparent through our process. We'll be bringing things forward so that the governing board is aware of what we're doing and provide input. So it isn't as if, and I think it's probably some of the difference too. I think folks are generally used to, you approve X amount of dollars to buy this widget and we go buy that widget. That is not going to be the case with this. This is basically going to be a process still, even moving forward. So I just want to kind of throw that as well, just to provide some comfort as well, that it's not just going to just happen.
And independent of the style and the collaborative style that Stephen was, and transparency that he was just talking about, remember again, there's oversight. The general manager reports to the governing board, and the governing board is going to oversee all of our expenditures and make sure that our staff is always in compliance with our stated policies and bylaws. So just have some reassurance there if that helps. So if there are any questions on this particular item or comments from our community, from our residents that are here. Seeing none, and there are none online, but I will say that that we did get a note. Thank you, Director Horvath, who is watching online. Thank you for telling us it was hard to hear you when you were at the lectern. So we'll just make sure, I'll keep an eye on that going forward. You're loud and clear to us, but maybe we can just keep an eye on that. So thank you for that. So I'm going to quickly, I'm going to assume for each of these items, I just want to get a quick consensus that this is indeed the consensus of the committee as an overall. So again, agree means you agree to pull this item out. Object means you object to pulling the what I'm calling IT, the website redesign capital item is what we're talking about here. Agree means pull this out for special consideration. Object means I object to pulling this out. Ed, we'll start with you. Sorry, one moment.
Can you give me a little, if we pull it out, can you kind of elaborate on what happens?
Oh.
So I know.
Oh, sure. I tried to explain this before. I'll try again. No, that's okay. The governing board otherwise approves the entire capital budget, every line item as a whole. So this gives a recommendation to the governing board to pull something out of that overall view and to vote on it independently. It doesn't mean pull it out of the budget. It means pull it out for independent review. So it doesn't, I hope that clarifies. So we can be in support, but still say we want an independent, we want the governing board to discuss this as a whole. That's what we're voting on. So agree means pulling it out for review. Object means I object to pulling it out for review. Keep it in the whole. Clear? All right. Ed?
Agree.
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 Agreed.
Jim?
I hope I did this right. I object.
Okay. Nikki?
Agree.
Cool. So we still have consensus to pull this out for review, and we'll move on to the next item that I believe we may have some questions on, and that's the master plan. Similarly, a lot of what we've talked about is the process of approving the capital and so forth. Does anyone have a concern with or want to recommend that we pull the master plan out for governing board to discuss as well? So I see head shaking. Anyone want to recommend that or propose it? Excellent. So the final recommendation we'll make then is that every other item on that capital improvement list is we would recommend that the governing board move forward and approve those as written. Any questions, by the way, before we move on to the recommendation? Any concerns or questions from our residents? Great. So we'll start to the viewers' right this time. Mickey, agree means you agree to move forward with the rest of the capital, to recommend that, I should say. And object means you would object to recommending that.
Agree.
Jim?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agree.
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 Excellent. So again, consensus on the rest. So we have one pullout that we're recommending, and that is the suncitywest.com website redesign. All the others we recommend moving forward. I'm going to make a quick note here. Very good. So that wraps up agenda item 3.03. You're off the hook, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you.
For now. We'll see you at the next one, then. The next item on our agenda is 3.04. That's our proposed operating budget. Cliff, you can walk us through any changes that we have on that.
Thank you, Director Novello. Good morning, everyone. I've got a quick presentation on our operating budget for FY2025-26. Brought some more data and information to the table after the feedback from the last B&F committee meeting and our governing board meeting as well. So I just want to present some of the data to give some more insights into this budget. So I just want to remind everybody that the two things that impact our budget the most, of course, are inflation and wages. And I wanted to provide this kind of historical look at inflation and minimum wage and the percent increases for the last, since 2010. And these are huge budget drivers for us. And a lot of times we're chasing these numbers as well because we end our year, in June 30. So this is, calendar year information. But These have huge impacts into our operating budget, and a lot of times, or most of the time, we have no control over them. Okay, so we have to consider those when putting our budgets together, and you can see over time what inflation and the minimum wage increase has done in the market here in Arizona. So also remind that we're 12% below the average when it comes to our wage surveys. So when we take our overall, and these are kind of different cost centers for us, bowling, finance, golf maintenance, all the way down the line, but when you compare our wages in these different areas to like positions in the wage survey done by Pay Factors, which is a nationally renowned wage study outfit, we are 12% below the average. Now, obviously pay is a large factor in when someone goes to work somewhere. It's not the only factor, but it is a large factor. And we operate at that 12% below average when you take our benefits and our culture. We still feel like we're very competitive and can attract and retain employees, but every year the average wages go up, and just simply because of minimum wage, but also what's going on locally in the Phoenix market, those go up. So we have to bake that into our budget as well. So that contributes to our expense increase when it comes to our positions year over year. We have 4% in the budget this year and address the cost of living increase, the minimum wage, as well as merit increases for those who we want to make sure that they're getting compensated for the work that they're doing, as well as making sure that we can retain them and keep our positions, and a nice balance with our benefits to make sure that we retain employees and keep employees and attract employees when we have to replace them. So just to kind of show, I was at Panda Express last week, and I took a picture of these two posters with my phone, and you can see what, for taking that ladle and scooping the rice out of and putting in a rice bowl with something, you get $18.50 to $20.50 an hour. Our starting wage here for a lot of our positions is minimum wage. So there's, we're competing against that, and then, you can be a store manager for $83,000 to $120,000, which is basically directing, managing, and supervising employees to do a low-skilled task that, doesn't really take a lot of, I wouldn't say it's a highly technical skill. So the point of showing this is just to show that this is what we're competing with in the market for the types of employees that we're going to hire. These are kind of low-skilled employees that it's a very they're desired in the workforce. So I just wanted to show these two things as well to just show you what we have to compete against. Okay, so in terms of salaries and wages, that's why we baked in the increases that we do. Those are the two main reasons why. A, things out of our control, Arizona minimum wage, inflation, all the things out of our control that impact our employees. Cost of living, health insurance goes up for everybody. Everything is increasing in the market, and to retain those employees, we have to try and make sure that we're paying them fair wages based on what they can go get somewhere else. I wanted to give some insights into our budget when it comes to pools and spas, because I think what it does is it helps. This is one amenity in the community that we have, but there's a large cost to those. So I wanted to give some insights into pools and spas and then compare that to golf, for example, what golf costs the community. So we've got some, I don't know if you knew, we have over 1 million gallons of water at all our pools and spas that we take care of on a daily basis. It's just kind of crazy. We have this resource guide that has all of our resources that Russ put together. It's wonderful. And when I heard that number, I was just like, wow. But over 1 million gallons of water, 1.076 million gallons of water 199,000 cubic feet. So if we look at, we did a cost analysis of what pools cost us. It shocked me, to be honest with you, because I've never really done a data study dive into this, but it's significant. These are the labor hours. Now these are just hard costs, direct costs. There's other costs that, for example, when I compare this to golf, that are fully vetted out in the golf division, because we have a division for that, so we can put all of those costs in there. But for pools, I mean, $328,000 in labor, $416,000 in utilities to pump the water and to heat the water, and then just chemicals and pool equipment, $276,000. So when you bundle all that up, that's $1,022,000 that is in this budget for pools. If you compare that to golf courses generate about $13 million in revenue. They have about $14 million in expense, so about $1.1 million in overall subsidy to the community with golf, which is about $150,000 per golf course. If you take the 5 pools at the 4 rec centers, it's $250,000 per rec center that we spend on pools. And I'll remind you again, golf is fully vetted for all costs. The labor numbers and some of the other ancillary costs built in to rec centers that are in pools aren't even in that number. So I just want, again, to give some more insights into the budget and talk about some of the things that are in the budget and the costs and the things that we have to do here. And that's one amenity. That's just pools. We have tons of amenities here. So just wanted to provide that. So that said, again, operating budget, we're going to have $8.1 million in cash reserve fund inflow, with the 1.2 coming from operating, which is our reserve fund allocation. And then we've got 5.9 budgeted to come from APFs. We have 981,000 we're projecting on our reserve fund investment income. And that 8.1 million will service the currently 5.8 million in capital improvement, and will create a positive cash flow for us. And if you look at that, this is kind of the 5-year study of that. So we'll have 2.2 million coming off of approximately $2.2 million deficit this year. And then down the line, you can see how we're forecasting those cash inflows and outflows with capital improvements in our modeling. So what's the reserve fund impact? Fortunately, $53 million in capital projects over the next 5 years. We anticipate our reserve fund to hold steady at $28 million after funding 53 million in capital improvement projects. Pretty impressive. And again, this is part of the big picture that gets missed in our budgeting process. When we put the operating budget together, there are a lot of unknowns in that, okay? We don't really know if golf is gonna hit the rounds that we anticipate. It could do better, could do worse. We don't really know if the APFs, traditionally, 1,100 is definitely the sweet spot. We're gonna hit that this year. We don't really know if the APFs are gonna hit what they're gonna hit. That's why when I talk about dues, it's our guaranteed source of revenue for us. And if we're planning for the future, in this budget, we've got IT budget, we have master plan funds. We have to make sure that at a minimum, the number that's in this budget, that we hit that. And there is some conservatism in it, I will say that. But again, we're one rain out's 50 grand for us. One rain out.
Golf course rain out.
Golf course rain out. 50,000.
Just wanted to make sure we were clear.
Yep. Yep.
So every day we have a big rainy event that we're celebrating in the streets.
Yes.
50,000.
50. Yep. So these are things that are overall baked into the budget when we put the whole budget together, and we have some good historical data. But again, if we don't deliver on golf rounds, if we don't deliver on APFs, that impacts us. And then I'll also remind everyone that if we have a favorability in the current year to budget, that is baked into the budget for next year in terms of the reserve fund balance. So, because the only number we have to point to is that FFB percent in our policies and bylaws. It has to be 40%. Okay? So that's the number that we point to make sure that when we anticipate what our reserve fund balance will be, how healthy are we? You know, how healthy can we be over the next 5 years? And so these are all considered in the budgeting process. So anyway, so I wanted to point those things out. A couple other things I want to point out. When we look at our fully funded balance, we did a presentation on that a couple months ago. I would say the feedback I received from this committee is pretty eye-opening. Wow, a couple of things, great planning, but some of the things that came out of it is I didn't realize how many assets we had. I didn't understand, I didn't really know the impact of what happens every year when you roll that thing forward. But I want to remind everybody, when we roll our fully funded balance forward to 2026, we've got 5.7 million in fully funded balance that we use for that year. 5.7 million. So added to our fully funded balance is 5.7 million right out of the gate. On top of that is 1.9 million in inflation, 3% on that. 1.9 million in inflation. So that just inflation alone costs our FFB percent by 1.4 points. So we're down 1.4 points. We have to fund another 5.7 million. Also built into this budget. Okay, so these factors are considered with assessing our FFB percent as part of our 5-year modeling and our annual financial plan. So big picture, we also have to make sure we're accounting for this. So you've got the operating budget, you have the guaranteed member dues, you have the best guess on the other streams of revenue, which are tied to things that are out of our control, economy, interest rates, whatever's going on in the real world. Okay, so all of that's baked into this budget, and it's hard. I understand it's hard to understand. Well, it's just hard to get that point across to everyone in the community and what that means. But I just want you to consider that when considering this budget. And then finally, still in 2025, we're a top 10 community in Retire Better Now. The reason we are is because of the budgeting and the planning, the prior governing boards, prior leadership, prior operations, B&F committees, understanding that we have to plan for the future and understanding that when we look at this budget, we look at it overall, big picture as well, not just honing in on one specific item, but looking at the overall picture and making sure that our fully funded balance is funded properly. So this is what gets us there.
We're the envy of many other local communities, as much as we can see. We're not just saying this to pump ourselves up, but not only that we're one of the top 10, but because we are the beneficiaries of 40 some odd years of some excellent planning, especially in the past 10 or so where things have been more challenging, it seems to me. But regardless, we are, we're beholden to that, and the challenge for us is to roll that forward. So thanks. And one of the things that I asked you guys to be thinking about in advance, and you've all weighed in, of course, is on the operating budget as well. I just want to make sure that we understand a few things. Again, the governing board and we consider the operating budget as a whole, right? It funds a lot. I just want to, if I could, ask us as a committee, I know that we're going to have a lot of questions or comments on the operating budget, the dues and so forth, but I really want us to kind of to step back because we're the numbers people, if you will. That's what our committee does. We look at these financial considerations and we understand better than many of our neighbors, right, what this all entails. And they are trusting us to ask the tough questions, right? So that's good. But while we're here and while we're talking about this, I want to make sure that your collective voices or individual voices are heard. If I could, Terry, I believe you have, and if you don't, that's fine, but there's also an attachment for the budget packet, the financial plan packet. If we could pull that up as well, I would appreciate it. And because I asked you guys to be thinking about, it's page 3 of that, the assumptions part, please. Thank you. And we're doing, by the way, thank you, Terry, because I didn't ask you to do this in advance. I just wanted you guys as a committee, some of the things that we need to consider are the specifics, right? It's one thing to start, right at the top of this, we're talking about a member's dues increase, and we're all very, sensitive to that. But let's start a little bit more at the bottom, if you will. Maybe not literally, but I want to make sure that we all appreciate the fact that we've been building up to this over the entire year. We've already looked at some of these, we've looked at health insurance, we've looked at inflation, we've considered together the work that's still pending, but very good work of the investment policies working group, and we're all in support of that. So a lot of these assumptions are baked into everything that we've done. And while some of them could be flexible, a lot of them aren't. So I just wanted to make sure that we understand how everything has built up over time. So this overall inflation factor, again, as Cliff mentioned, we can't really change that. We have to start with something, and that's how the foundation of our plan. The health insurance rates, we didn't really have a lot of, that's really something that is out to bid. And again, we have to accept the changes and the increases. If there are changes that the governing board wants to consider or recommend, this is not the time to recommend those. These health insurance rates have already been set for the calendar year, right? And health insurance is a key part of how we attract and retain our people as well. In addition to the wages, which, as Cliff mentioned, the vast majority of our wages, if you will, by the amount of money we fund, is really at the minimum wage or tied to the minimum wage, right? So those minimum wage changes, increases, are not something that we can change. These are things that are given to us, correct? So I'm going from bottom up here. So I asked us all to consider some of the other assumptions, right? We've all been looking at this now for several meetings, I believe. Facilities rental fees, we're assuming that those will not change in this budget. When I say we, it's the royal we. The team has proposed changes in the lineage and rates. So let's talk about number 5. Anyone have any? And again, the Sports Pavilion Committee has looked at this in detail. They've made they've moved forward with this assumption and agreed that 311,000 lines of bowling is correct, and the bowling fees that are proposed are also correct. Anyone have anything that they want to challenge on bowling? All right, presumed as much. Golf fees, right? The golf committee has met and discussed in detail some of the golf fees, and they made some recommendations of their own to the staff on how the revenue increase will be met. A number of us attended the golf committee meeting in person. We've all watched it back. Any concerns on the golf round fees, or number 3, the number of golf rounds that are projected? See, we're just cruising through here. Now, let's talk a bit about APF, right? There's both a rate increase that's proposed, but let's talk about the volume, the budgeted volume of 1,100. Cliff, you had mentioned we've had a similar assumption for a number of years, and I believe that's what we've baked into our going forward plan, our 5-year plan as well, correct?
Yeah, that number has been adjusted too. It used to be 1,200. We've
Right.
recently pulled that back to 1,100. We're on, last year we hit 1,174, I believe.
Yeah.
We're on pace with last year through February. I haven't looked at the March numbers yet. So I feel good about 1,100 in terms of the APF transactions. So I feel good about that, and that will factor in obviously to the rate increase, because if we don't have the transactions, we've got we've got to come up with that revenue. So
Right.
I think that's a good balance there. I mean, internally, operationally, we think 1,100 is a good number.
It's early on, but there was a law that changed in the fall that does impact what we can collect the APF fee on, right? So something, if an inheritance is no longer something that we can collect an APF rate. Do you expect that this is going to impact this volume? It's hard to tell, I know.
It's hard to tell. I will say, though, we thought there would be a bigger impact this year. We have a program that we work, Deb Long works, called REDS, and we thought that would be the most impacted because that's what most of those transactions are. A lot of those transactions are, they kind of escape the normal process of handling, and we find those out through this program called REDS, and then kind of work back from there. And what we're finding is that it's not having the impact that we thought it would. So, because our REDS program is still approximately 300,000. So it's down a little bit, but year over year, but it's been holding steady. So still some time and to kind of figure this out. But I think again, I think 1,100 is still a good number.
The team is still comfortable with that.
Yes.
It's aggressive or potentially aggressive again, but if you guys are comfortable, that answers my question. Before we talk about the rate, any questions from the rest of the committee on the volume of new homes or home turnovers? Jim?
So we're talking about just the volume. We're not talking about the rate.
Before we get to the rate, we'll
Yep,
talk
I'm
first
good.
volume. Yeah. So this is how Christine gathers consensus. You start with, you have to build up to something. This is a very fraught conversation. So no questions, or are there any? David?
I just want to comment. I think it's a fair assessment where you are, Cliff, with that. I feel comfortable with it. I did go back and look at the number of houses on the market for about 15, 20 years. It stays pretty consistent. It doesn't change dramatically. You may have tenths of a percentage point, so we're not any different there. I think we all are subject to what happens on the economy, and that's, you're predicting in a very conservative way that this is probably a fair value to assess for next year, and I think that's a good point to be at.
Cool. Thank you. So now we can talk about the rate, because the APF rate is proposed to increase by $200. So we'll start with you, Jim, since, you sort of, if you'd like to start us off with questions or comments on that, we'll come back to you too if that's too soon. Someone's got to start.
I guess this is where, yes, we've benefited, we're beneficiaries of past folks that have been on the committees and planning and part of the rec centers and the governing board, but we're also stewards for the future and today for our community. And I guess this is more just a comment than anything. I'm just beside myself how the APFs were so stable, and we discussed this earlier, how they were stable prior to COVID, and now after COVID, and in your future projections, we've got it baked in 4%, and inflation was always there. The variables are consistent on both sides of the argument. So I guess the APFs and the dues are finite, and I know I've beat this dog dead, but that's my comment.
Well, it's not, in your defense, right? It's not so, this is our role as committee members, right? Not so much to beat the dog dead, but to ask the questions. So anything in particular other than, can you comment though on the stability? Sure. And because it wasn't perfectly stable, but comment for us to answer that. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, I guess, and it's been an eye-opening experience sitting here and you providing all the information and seeing it holistically with the health insurance, the workers' comp, and, you know, everything just going up, up, up. And you guys in the, doing a wonderful job with capitals, projects. It's just, it is what it is, I guess, is what I've kind of concluded.
Yeah, so I think we had a stretch where inflation was below 2%. And if you look at what's happened, and, you know, if you look at that slide that I did on the reserve study and what happens just rolling 1 year forward, it's had a significant impact on our reserve fund. I mean, we're up at 115 million for the cost of the assets on the reserve fund right now. Not the fully funded balance, not the used portion of that. The used portion of that is 63 million. But every year that used portion goes up 5.7 million. So I would say with inflation, the big capital projects that we have coming up with the irrigation projects, APS has gone a long way to fund that. And if we didn't have it, it would have to come from somewhere. It would have to come from member dues. It would have to come from golf rates. Okay? Those are two largest sources. So we have to be good stewards and find the balance, stay competitive in the market, which we are, in terms of the asset preservation fee. And we can still keep our member due percentage below at 8%, 7 to 8%, which if you look at member dues funding the reserve fund, it's 15 to 40% in any HOA. What
And
member
this
dues
is,
go to fund the reserve
this is
fund.
the percentage that accrues back to our reserve.
Correct. This is
Yeah,
the
when you
AP
said
yep.
member due percent, I just wanted to make sure.
So the reserve fund allocation, we take 7.5% of our reserve of our member dues, our member and associate dues, and we allocate that to in the capital section to our reserve fund. Industry average is 15 to 40, and we're able to do that. We're able to do that with a 47-year-old facility with 115 million in asset costs just for our reserve study, because we have APF fees, and we're targeting the people that come into this community and buy for the first time and buy into what you all have been paying for however long you've lived here. So it really is a good thing, and I understand what you're saying. They have gone up, but I will say that's because of future planning, because of inflation rates, and because of that reserve study and the age of the assets that are coming up.
And I guess that's the other thing I've kind of woken up to the idea of, as we go into the master plan, you know, if we're ever going to evolve into, you know, something bigger and better, that kind of plays into it as well.
Great point, because we've got modeled 1.4 million a year in new capital in that, just as a modeling placeholder for new capital, new and enhancements. So yes, if there's a project down the road that is a $5 million, $3 million, $7 million master plan project, that gets funded from the reserve. Absolutely. So again, if we focus on individual things in the budget and we go, oh boy, I bet you we can carve out $100,000 and save, instead of doing a $28 increase, we can do a $24 increase. That's not the way to look at the budget. It really isn't. That's not how we look at it. We really have to plan big picture and plan for what we think is going to happen, but also do it in a way that if it doesn't happen, we still have a balance of everything. So.
And we're doing this, you know, together. We're looking at the investment policy as a potential shift. We'll be talking about that more at our next meeting, we expect. But yeah, it's all good. It's the kind of thing that Jim, as you, I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but as you, when I first joined the Budget and Finance Committee a number of years ago, I also, my eyes were opened to the level of detail and the difficulty of the decisions. I was always very comfortable with the financials right when I moved here, but just the same, there's a lot that goes in. And so thanks for that. Do any of us have any feedback on the APF rate in either, is it high enough? Is it too high, the proposed rate? I know that that sounds like a crazy question, but Nikki?
So to echo your comments, this is my first year on this committee. I've been in the community for 5.5 years now, and have always been very comfortable, with how the financials looked. But this year has given me the opportunity to actually spend a lot of time with the numbers. And by a lot, I mean a gigantically bigger amount than I expected is what I would say. And the thing that has impressed me is the professionalism and completeness of both the process and the output, right? The inputs, the outputs, that. And remember, I am a CPA, right? I am a CPA. That's what I did. I did it for 41 years, and I managed gigantic organizations. That's what I did. So I am impressed. I do think, though, we also, and it is our job to also ask the questions that are hot button questions for our community. Okay, so that's really that. I would say the way the budget has been put together, I am both content with. I think it is an excellent output, but I do think that we also have to remember the hot point issues are these, in my opinion, from the feedback that I've heard. That is, how much is the APF fees and how much are they going to go up? And you look at it and it's under 4%. So I have to say, given what we have to work with and what the inflation rate is, I don't see how it is anything else. In terms of the 5-year plan, if we're going to say that the costs are going to go up over 5 or 10 or 20 years, the APFs are also going to go up. Unless it can't not go up. A second hot button, and we heard that, I watched it. I wasn't here, but I watched it, is that the increase in the member dues at 4.9%. It's hot button for some people, okay? I think that in the big picture that it is a bargain. $5.98 for what we get per person is a bargain, but I do think that we have to acknowledge that the increase is an issue for some people, and I think that we have to be both. Perhaps we can't do anything about that, but that we have to be sensitive to it. Another thing that I would say is, in looking at the wage increase of 4%, so the wage increase of 4%, I think, is very fair in terms of the fact that it's not just everybody gets 4%, but you have to look at, do we have people who have increases, they take on a new job, they get promoted, that 4%. But again, that 4% is a hot button issue for some of our people because they go to their Social Security check and notice that they got 2.5%.
Right.
And so my comment is that I think that this budget is fair. I think that it is well put together. I think it's achievable because I do believe you bake in some conservatism that if this goes down, this might be up. I think it's achievable, but I do think that we have to consider those hot button issues that concern our people.
I don't even know if there's a comment. Well, of course, you can comment, but just to kind of go back a little bit, Mickey, to what you were saying, our community counts on all of us on the committee, but especially the governing board, to question everything. And the great thing about this process, while long and arduous, first of all, we're not over, by the way, not by a long shot, but it's long and it's arduous for a reason. It's because we can't get what we want, to quote the philosophers, Mick and so forth. But seriously, you can't always get what you want, but we do, we have a beautiful community that does need certain things. And all joking aside, it's tough. So it's not so much even, while we are also looking at and doing the due diligence necessary to assure ourselves that this increase, if necessary, is indeed necessary and responsible. We're looking at all the small items. That's our purview. But as Cliff mentioned, we will, as a committee, and make a recommendation, but the governing board will approve as a whole, not on the line item. But it's incumbent on all of us. Every committee's looking at it. This committee, we're counting on you as residents. We're all counting on you and each other to comb through it and look for the small things as well as the big. So thanks for assuring us that every one of us has that different levels of corporate experience. A number of us have been CPAs in the past, but we're all sort of, I wanted us to talk at length about the assumptions and make sure that we're all comfortable with how this budget was put together. So thanks for that. I just wanted to assure us that we're looking at the small things. All of us, staff as well as committee, as well as governing board.
Just a quick, may I comment?
Please.
Yes, agreed. Those are always hot buttons for us, and we want to come prepared to be able to explain the necessity or the reasoning behind it, but also we understand that we're sensitive to that, and we want to keep this place a bargain. If we can, in a way that we can, we want to keep it that way because that helps us with our rating. It helps us with, again, those 1,100 APFs. If this is a value for people to come here and live out their final years, we want to do that. We also, at the same time, need to make sure we're planning appropriately to keep it that way from the fixed asset side. But yes, we are definitely sensitive to that. And again, this whole process so far with the questions from this committee that we've had have been very robust, and it's given me an opportunity to really shed some light into some of these areas. And I appreciate all the feedback, and I'm happy to do it. And I hope I'm checking all the boxes for you.
Yeah.
That's really my objective.
And another clarification to point out is on the topic of wages, because as Mickey mentioned, this is a hot button for all of us on the board, on committees, and residents as well. But this percentage is a pool of money. It is not a guaranteed increase for all of our employees. It's not a guaranteed increase at all, but rather, as any business, including a not-for-profit, we need to have some ability to pay for wage changes. So we're not funding, please don't believe that we are funding a guaranteed increase. That is not the case. Rather, the request through the team is to establish a fund from which to provide salary changes. There's a whole operational process about how people are assessed, and there's a performance-based increase opportunity for employees that are not minimum wage employees, right?
Absolutely. An employee, we have 40 deliverables in our strategic plan. 19 of those are in this budget to be delivered in FY26. One of the items in that is assessing wages for our employees, making sure that we're competitive in the market, making sure we're retaining our employees, not just our wages, but our benefits and everything. So that's also one of the deliverables in our strategic plan. And that helps us in the long run. It helps us retain employees and save costs when it comes to rehiring and retaining employees. So there's a benefit there, and it's one of our priorities.
Thank you. We'll go around and comment the rest. So Ed, any comments on APF rate?
Yeah,
dues?
I've been talking to people I have in contact, whether it's over the card table after the golf game, and try to get them more aware because they're learning too. And they were okay when I talked about the member dues, 4.9%. And after I told them that what that pays for versus the APFs, they had an understanding of it. But what kind of bothered them a little bit is why the APF fee was only 3.8% for people coming into the community, and the people that are here at 4.9%. And then their thought on
You mean the increase is
Yeah.
3.9%? Okay.
3.8 versus 4.9. And they thought, and again, it's just what they thought, is that houses were staying on the market longer than what they used to be. You know, you get 2 offers in 2 hours. Is that 1,100 really reasonable with what we're seeing? So their main bug was they should come to the table with the same percentage increase that the members have. So 4.9, they said, made sense to them.
Yeah, I would, I mean, that's a fair analysis, I guess. We do like to stay on the market with it, so as well. So we look at what the competitors around us are charging. We feel like we're on the market. We'd still be $100 less than Sun City, for example, but we'd be $400 more than the Grand when it comes to APF fee. So we feel like that's kind of the sweet spot for us. But I mean, I can appreciate the analysis and the feedback there.
Yeah, their comment was they didn't know about the APF fee until after they closed on the house. And it didn't seem to affect them as what they made the decision to move into the community, but
yeah,
and you know, certain things they talked about. Some communities have a bond issue when new people come in, and
Yeah, thankfully, our community is run differently, you know, which is
Yeah.
one of the
So-
reasons that attracted me, probably you as well.
so I wanted to bring that to as what I like
Sure.
to hear, the voice of the customer, and that's what
Thank you.
customers I talk to.
And I think the team has really been clear that they want to hear the voice of us and voice of our fellow residents. So thanks for that. It's interesting too when you were mentioning the analysis. I think we all get questioned over whatever table, a card table or a, you know, what have you. So thanks for that, Rick.
I have no problem with this at all. If you look at the communities that are struggling now, they're the ones who didn't put cost increases in their APFs and their annual dues over the last 5 years. So as a fiduciary responsibility of this committee, we have to make sure we stay financially stable. The other situation is with the West Valley growing as fast as it is, the market value of our homes keeps going up and up and up. So the availability and affordability of this community is moving. And that's why we have to do this, because it's not the same sweet community that in 1994 that the people moved in. It's a lot different now. The demographics are different. The infrastructure is different, all of that. So you like it here? I'm sorry, but these are the costs you have to pay to keep the community where it is today. So
Yeah, I did some research. I had a conversation with Mr. Scott recently, and we were talking about home values. And so I did a little research after talking with you, and I was really surprised, to be honest. But the average list price in Sun City West is $411. Average sale price is $370. If you compare that to Sun City, their average sale price is $280. So if you look at the average sale price in Sun City, you look at the average sale price in Sun City West, there's a $90,000 difference in the market when it comes to that. But yes, home values are increasing. You know, there's some other factors going on with that, but yeah.
David, any comments?
No, I would agree with what my committee members have said thus far. And I think that when I hear things in the community, it is, it's going up 4.9%. I think it's just what you had said earlier because of the way Social Security check. But when I hear those comments, I then go through and ask them what amenities they would like to have changed, or what what they thought the budgeting process actually entailed. And when my learning as they have in this past several months here of how this is done. It's a very thorough and thoughtful process. And even going to the golf committee and seeing how they made recommendations to adjust because they thought that their members were hearing it. It's from a ground up. And so I understand the community's concern. It increases, we all are. But we live in a world where unfortunately inflation has been unusually high in the last couple of years. And we have to adjust for that. And thus, to keep the amenities as we have them today, I feel comfortable with what has been proposed. And I think the background that has been done to achieve this point where we're at today is very strong. And if you explain it to individuals, I think they have a better understanding. But it took, myself a few months here to understand all that. And it is not simple. And it is complex. There's a lot of levers that are pulled to make all these things come together. And I think we've done the best that we can do in the environment we're at. And all these things contribute to this final point where we're at.
Thank you, David. Chris?
Well, first, we're a premier community, and it may not be recognized as much just driving through the community as it is sitting here and listening and following other committee meetings and see how we're run. I mean, our future, I have zero doubt about our future. And it's because of the way we do things like this. The APF fee, it's funny because people don't have a reason to call me, but I've never heard anybody said I won't move here because of the APF fee. I've never met a new neighbor who said, well, I thought about it, but the APF fee never was it a concern. I think we're reasonable. I think we should be higher than average because we're better than average as a community. I don't think we understand. Like I'm fresh off a visit from the Villages. Last week I was at the Villages, where a friend of mine's buying a house and explained to me the $25,000 to $35,000 bond you would pay for a new house there. And I questioned a lot, like, well, what happens 35 years later after the bond pays for the infrastructure? What happens 35 years later when everything's falling apart? There was no answer. But
right.
You know what's going to be? It's going to be another bond or another assessment, right? We don't have that issue or problem. So, by the way, they'll beat us just on pretty. But if you drive through it, it looks so pretty and so nice. So, I think that's something we should strive to improve and maybe more modern. But I think, like David said, understanding how these numbers got to where these numbers are, understanding what we do with the money, makes it completely understandable to me and proud to be part of it.
Thanks. Thank you, Chris. And it's interesting when I was nodding along with you. I also have some friends and family who have purchased in and who live in the Villages. So no disrespect to anyone's decisions, but they're run very, very differently. And again, we are the beneficiaries of a very different type of planning, and I'm grateful. And that's why I'm here, I guess. But thanks for that. And there's a lot that can be said for pretty, but there's also a lot more that can be said for stable. And coming from a finance MBA, right? So anyway, John, thank you.
Yeah, I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable because of the process and how thorough it is, because our staff has, a handle on the numbers. It's reasonable. I look at items 1 and 2 there, and I think I agree with our counterparts. I think 1's the hotter button than 2, and the balance is an important word. You're putting a puzzle together, and you got to keep it balanced for what's happening today and what you think will happen in the future. So I think you have that. So I'm very comfortable with number 2.
Thanks for that, John. And the other thing I'm going to add is we've had a lot of opportunity to work together, and we have several more months of working together as a committee, more work to do, but really applaud the transparency. It's not always great news that we hear, the increases in things that we can't control, like insurance and so forth. That there are things that we can and there are things that we cannot control. It's great to have the input. I've said it before, but it's worth repeating, I think, that the level of transparency over operational staffing has so improved our ability to feel comfortable with item 7, if you will. Still a lot of concern, of course, all of our members, know who wants to pay more money for anything, we get that. But in terms of understanding how we've built this budget from the ground up, that's why I literally wanted, and thank you, Terry, to show this page where let's take a look at the underpinnings, because we are the numbers team, if you will. Is there anything here that we can credibly question to ensure that we are doing our due diligence? I am hearing, and committee, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing that we've had questions, our questions have been answered, and generally we have consensus that at this point we're comfortable. Did I encapsulate that? And we continue to represent members' viewpoints, but that's what I'm hearing back. If there are any comments or questions from owner members who are here, we welcome those now. All right, then, hearing none, there's no need for a recommendation on this point. I think we can represent to the governing board that at this point we're comfortable. The governing board has yet to really analyze this and provide some comments, ask questions. Cliff, you'll be back at the next meeting and at all subsequent meetings until we have a vote from the governing board. So if there are any changes, anything that comes back from the governing board, we'll hear from you on the 15th. Thank you. So with that, we've wrapped up item 3.04, and I just want to thank again Budget and Finance Committee. My hats are off to you across the entire year, but thank you so much for taking so much time to go through all the nuances and the small things. Our work is not done on the budget, but thank you again for all your hard work to this point. We'll move on now to 4.01. We've had the opportunity to make some comments about the budget and the process already, but this is our time for the committee to make any other additional comments. We'll start with you, Chris, this time, because we never start with Chris.
I'll just add on a little bit to what I just said. I'm a little bit, going back to my visit to the villages, when I drove through the villages, I could understand why people live there. It's a wonderful place. I'm not putting it down. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just different. It's like comparing apples to oranges. I will tell you, as far as being concerned for Sun City West and the future of Sun City West, they've got a marketing advantage that just blow us away. Again, just drive through one of their little town centers, and you go, wow, this is so much nicer than Sun City West. That would be their first impression. And that's something looking forward that I think we really have to approach. When we talk about strategic planning or we don't win on that. We win on the fact that we're stable, that we're safe, that we're happy, that we have great amenities, but we just don't win that marketing war.
It's a master plan consideration. Thanks. David?
No, I just like to comment that this committee discussion today was thorough, and we had thoughts of which we wanted to bring forth, and I think it was important to do so. And we had a lot of our questions answered. I think it came to the point where we now as a committee have done our duty of fiduciary responsibility, and that is to do an assessment and come forward with a recommendation to the board. And so while there can be discussions, it doesn't mean that we have found anything wrong here at all. I think the leadership team and everyone have done a really good job of putting this good budget together.
Thanks, David. Rick?
Okay, I'm gonna get myself in trouble here. Okay, and I'll be perfectly honest. I think the budget process is broken. It takes a long time, a lot of duplication of activities. I think we need to reevaluate the budget process and the time frame it takes to do that. Saying that, we have the strategic planning process that's coming into play now, and that is going to drive the budget process. And if it takes this long to drive the budget process, how long is it going to take to drive the strategic planning process, to develop the process? I just think we should look at how much duplicate activities and redundancies we see month after month after month. And that's just my comment, so.
Fair comment. I don't think you're in trouble, but that's why you're here. You're here to voice your comments, right? So all the more reason to stay engaged. So, Ed?
No, over this process, I've been impressed with that all opinions are important and that they're evaluated, and that my 12 years here, 13 now, this is the most transparent I've seen it. And no question is, we'll get back to you, or maybe that's not something you need to know. I haven't been that way, so it's been a journey, but I think that we've come up with the right recommendation and feeling. Thank you.
Thanks. Mickey?
Apparently I was on the entire time, so good thing I wasn't talking. I really echo that. I think that this has been a real learning experience, right? I think that being in the community versus getting involved at this level is it's just been a real learning experience. And I think that what we all can do is just keep helping illuminate that with the people that we talk to, right? Is that when people, one of the reasons that I got on this is that I just was getting a lot of this, right? A lot of this chatter about things. And they're like, well, you have a financial background. Why don't you? Okay, well, I will. And so what now I can do is go back and say, this is a really professionally run organization. You know, that has been just the key learning. And so having conversations with people when they do this, I usually have the answer for that. Well, did you consider this? Did you consider that? These are all the things that go into it. Did you have any idea that we do this, that, and the other? So I do think that part of what we can do is just be those not only stewards, but also part of the messaging, right? Part of the messaging. Because what I will say is, in some of this, I find our messaging to be a little clunky, okay? I find our messaging to be a little clunky, and that it could be a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more directed, and we are very transparent. But for example, on our master plan and things like that, is that when we're having conversations about, well, what does this entail? Sometimes what you have to say loudly is, first phase, we don't have all the answers, and we'll develop it from here, and things like that. So I am very impressed and pleased to be able to be part of this. I like the fact that we can really help with the messaging, and I would just say, I think we need to continue to work on the messaging to our community.
Agreed. Thanks, Mickey. Jim?
I want to bring a lot of this all full circle to something that we fall painfully short of. And it falls on, I'm afraid it falls on you, Kyle and Stephen, it's our messaging, it's our branding, it's our marketing. It brings in the value, and it brings in the hot button with the do's, and it brings in the villages. We are apples to oranges with the villages. They are pretty, but they do not have the amenities that we have. And we fall painfully short of embellishing, of showing the community, of providing to the community the opportunities that are here daily. A simple Zumba class that may be happening at 2 o'clock today, nobody knows. Nobody knows there's a Sun City West Investment Club, or pottery, or Silvercraft, or the list goes, the wood shop, the metal shop, the list goes on and on. We do not market it enough and provide on an app of what we could be going on doing later this afternoon to show that 570, 598, whatever it is a bang for the buck at the end of the day. We aren't pretty, we aren't the newest and greatest. There's opportunity to bring on some to clean that up. But we do have an asset. It's our clubs that I just feel like we fall painfully short on showing it and bringing it to the community and making that member experience more vibrant. I went to one of my experience with the villages. I went to one of their fancy rec centers, and their sewing club was a bunch of little old ladies hoofing in their sewing machines into a conference room. That's their sewing club, in and out with their own personal sewing machine. And that doesn't hold a candle to what we have for Rip and Sew. And so I just can't stress it enough that we've got to kick up our branding and our marketing to really highlight the value that it's right here in front of everybody, but nobody knows.
Thanks, Jim. Well said. John?
Yeah, I'm just going to make a few quick comments just about the budgeting process. I said this in the past, but I just think it's incredibly thorough, incredibly well done. And I want to remind us that it just doesn't start with Cliff or with Stephen. You know, you've got Carl over here who's built an incredible program, and congratulations again, Carl. And each of the division leads are doing a budget all year round. It is a long process, but it's incredibly thorough. And at the end of the day, the numbers come out and they're accurate, and we can have a lot of confidence in them. I love that you start at the ground up with expenses, and you look at each component and you build it up and you come up with that. And then you go and say, now how do I capture what I have to capture in revenues? And then it's thorough on how you look at all of the avenues to build that increase in expenses. I kind of came prepared today because I thought we talked more about the 4% or the 4.9%, and we didn't, and I'm glad we didn't, because I think they're very reasonable. So anyway, I won't go into that. I had some little stories I would tell, but I won't. Save us the time. And I'm glad we didn't, because I think the budget as a whole is just really well done, and congratulations to your team for doing it that way.
Thanks, John. And again, the operating budget process is not done yet, but I'm going to say a couple of quick things about the process, because I'm a process nerd, for lack of a better phrase. I say that affectionately about myself, but I hear what you're saying, and I could not agree more about some of the inefficiency. But I do want to give the governing board and President Leary and myself and others a bit of a pat on the back, because you should have been here last year. So we experimented with changing things up to improve some efficiencies around capital, right? And we did. It was a little painful because any change is new and it's hard. But we're going to continue to look for those opportunities. And again, I want to point out, we're at the 1st of April. We have a couple more months together, and we do have time to collect those thoughts about potential process improvements for next year, and we will make use of your good time on that before we end. But I just wanted you to know that there have been some improvements, and not to say that we're done. There's so many opportunities there to continue to improve that process. So that will be done, and I couldn't agree more with the messaging comments. And again, it's gotten so much better. Transparency has always been our goal as an overall group, both the board and committees, and of course the association itself. But I think a lot of great improvements have been made, and more to come. So more to come on all of this, but thanks for the comments. And again, I could not thank you all as a committee enough. You've put in untold hours that I am aware of. The community, hopefully the community understands. The other thing I want to, before I turn it over to our owner members and to Jack for other comments, I wanted to say for anyone who is listening now or here or watching back in the future, I want to thank the many residents who have written to me. I don't know if they've also written to our CFO, Cliff, or to members of the committee, but Members are really taking this messaging to heart, and I amplify it again. If you have questions and you're not listening live, because only when you're live can you post these questions, or if you're here, if you do have questions or comments, you're welcome to email them to me, christine.novello@suncitywest.com. Just know that we take those questions into consideration, your comments and so forth. But if you want to make those comments, if you want to make sure that your voice is heard, we do need you to come here and actually speak for yourself. We can't speak for you, but we are taking every word that you are sending to us and considering them and reading them all. So thanks for the input. Appreciate that. President Leary, do you have something you'd like to add?
I want to talk into this so that Dennis can hear me. So, Rick, I agree with you about the length of the budgeting process. It has bugged me for as long as I've been here. And to Christine's point, believe it or not, we actually did make some changes at the beginning of this fiscal year. You know, if you don't recognize them, I would ask you to talk to Cliff afterwards and find out what they were, because they were very subtle, but they were very important in terms of the amount of redundancy that we've removed. But I also have come to understand that my experience in budgeting, which would take a very relatively short period of time, you know, a quarter, you know, 3 months, 4 months maybe at the outside, is very different than what we have to do here, because we have to do this in front of our constituents, and we have to give them the opportunity to participate and to give us feedback. So yes, there is some amount of redundancy because we can't hit every person at the same time. So I've learned to calm myself down. That's, for me, you know, being a type A person, that's very difficult to do. But I want to give credit to the board and to the financial team for making that small change that we did. The other thing I want to do is also point out that we may not recognize, and this goes to Jim's point about the marketing, we don't do marketing. We depend upon outside organizations to rank us amongst, you know, our competitors to do that. But we've never had a strategic plan where we considered marketing important. We've kind of fumbled with it in the past. We've not produced results, but we've not actually set it out as a goal for ourselves. So actually marketing is one of the points, one of those 41 items in the strategic plan, so that we can start to do that and be more proactive rather than reactive, or just benign about it and saying, oh yeah, we're number 3. Oh, next year we're number 8. Well, you know, we're still top 10. You know, it's, you know, we have to be more in control of our destiny, or more of our message. So yeah, so we've now got that in place. And back on the budgeting thing, if you look at a video from May of 2021, where the Christine knows what I'm referring to. The governing board on the you know, we have to do this before the end of May, get the budget locked and loaded. In May of 2021, the board, on the very last day, the appointed day, was still negotiating certain elements of the budget. And the treasurer at that point literally pulled an envelope out and did some math on the back of the envelope and had a calculator. And at the 11th hour, a budget was determined and passed. So if you think that this was arduous, you know, it's better than last year. It's way better than May of 2021. But I give credit to this committee to making it better. You're asking a lot of the right questions, but also understand that there are some mechanics that, you know, we have to work on in the background too. So thank you for your patience and for getting us to this point.
Thank you, Jack. And it does not imply that the work is over. I think it was, you're not in trouble. See, you thought you were, but we need to continue to improve. And I believe we started with like all good process change, you can't make sweeping changes all at once, but you start somewhere, and hopefully we will continue to improve the process. But I grasped my head. I believe you can still look at that video. That was I was still working then, but a resident here, and that was the moment in which I volunteered for the first time to be selected for the Budget and Finance Committee because I wanted to make a difference. And that's why all of you are here, because you volunteered to make a difference as well. And we're all grateful for that. So at that, we'll turn it to our owner members and residents for comments. I see someone who I do not recognize. No, I see someone at the lectern already. So although I certainly know who you are from past service, if you could name and rec card number and introduce yourself, please, sir.
Gary Bosak, 102-585. You haven't seen my picture in the post office?
Not today.
It's not very often that you get a chance to share a historic moment in Sun City West. I'm a little bit off topic today, but I thought you'd appreciate this. I run a golf group on Monday with about 50 players, some really, really good players. And a week ago Monday, a fellow named George Dillon, we were playing Echo Mesa, he had 2 holes in 1 in the same round. He had a hole in 1 on number 3. I don't think I've ever hit that green. And he had a hole in 1 on number 15. And he's a wonderful person, relatively new to the community. I can't tell you how many pitchers of beer he bought, but Pat O'Hara would be very, very pleased. But the odds of that happening are 67 million to 1. The odds, I know your numbers people, that's why I'm sharing this. The odds of a regular golfer making a hole-in-one any time in their lifetime is 12,000 to 1. And the odds of a professional golfer making a hole-in-one are 5,000 to 1. So to do what he did is just an unbelievable accomplishment. We've been pressing the PR people to get something out there, and he interviewed with them yesterday, so they're going to publicize something, but I thought you'd give you a heads up. First time in the history of Sun City West that's ever happened. I've been here a long time, but I've asked any number of people, and the only thing we can come up that's even close to that, I think 2 years ago, a husband and a wife both made a hole-in-one in the same round. But that's about as close as we can get to what George did. So if you happen to see George or you see his name, know that he's a historian, and he's just a wonderful, wonderful person, and that's what Sun City West is all about.
That is an awesome story. I golfed Echo Mesa yesterday, so I heard about that from the PR team that was there interviewing him. Extraordinary. So 12,000 to 1 for me to ever get a hole-in-one, allegedly. And I would say it's more like the 67 million to 1, considering how I golfed yesterday. We have another question from...
And Gary, I heard he didn't win the game that day, too.
Goes to show you how tough it is to golf here. Fifth, wow. Indeed. Well, it gives us all something to look forward to, that's for sure, and appreciate that. There are no other questions online, and I see no one else at the lectern. Thank you for sharing that with us, Gary. I want to remind us that our next Budget and Finance Committee meeting is on April 15th, right here in the lecture hall. We still have a lot of work to do, and again, we'll also be hearing some feedback from the governing board on the budgeting process at that time. So we hope that we see you. We'll all be here. We hope that you join us here on April 15th. With that, I adjourn our meeting at 11:23. Thank you.